gents. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. My voice is a bit messed up. I've got 5 kids, and so, as you know, we share everything, viruses, the plague. So my voice is a bit rough now. I might break out into some Afrikaans singing, you know. What's that guy's name? Bok in die Kerk, what's his name? Yeah, with some Jack Black stuff, Tian Jordan. Take advantage of my gravelly voice. Sing The Gambler by Kenny Rogers, you know. All right, Lord, we pray that you would be with me this morning, hide me behind the cross, and help me do this for your glory. Truth bomb. Well, we're living in a time now where people are convinced that there are some cool new ideas around. What I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to show you what the Bible's always proclaimed, that there is nothing new under the sun. There is nothing new and cool going on. In fact, what's going on is very sad, that we've gone backwards in some sense. We're going to talk about that this morning. The ministry I'm with is called Ratio Christi. We work at the universities. We have a table over there. We have some ugly guys manning it, but you can go chat to them. We also have a number of other ministries here this morning. We'll talk about those later on that I'm associated with, other organizations, Camp David, Wilberforce Academy, Veritas, which is a theological education program. So something's up. Something's up. If you're paying attention to what is going on in culture, some strange things are happening. And we've all been expected to believe in things that we all know to be false, and yet the world moves on and demands are being made that you and I ought to believe in these things, and then there's a threat, or else. So where are these demands and prescriptions being made? What's happening in sport? Is this the future of women's sport, where blokes can run alongside the girls? This is old school. This is old school. What about our ideas happening in education? Concepts of sexuality, from the gender-bred person to the gender unicorn. What's that all about? Yeah, it's been taught to your children. Whose children? All of your children. If you're an Opa, your grandchildren. It's happening with our understanding of gender. When the woman of the year is a bloke, then you know there's a problem. But you're all being forced, all of you, to double think and to double speak. It's happening, tied to that former slide, it's happening with our kids. Apparently children know their sexuality at a very young age, and if they start playing with certain toys, you can start grooming them. Who knows, maybe you can prepare your daughter for the future, because she's decided that she's a man, so you can give her puberty blockers to flatten her chest out, to stop her going through those natural processes. And who knows, maybe she'll end up having top surgery or bottom surgery. It's happening at the toilet. We're not sure what symbols to use anymore. Who knows what symbols can represent the 73 new pronouns that have been invented? What symbols? It's happening to our heroes, who are heroes no longer. This man's a hero. He wasn't a saint. He did amazing stuff. He was a Baptist preacher. He said this: I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I would agree. Good statement. Apparently that's to reinforce a bad philosophy. We should judge people by the color of their skin. We should be color kind, not color blind. That's what's been taught in our countries now, is this kind of notion that we should judge people on the basis of their ethnicity. That's false. That's racism. How do you dispatch with racism? Teach racism. This is the kind of insane world we're living in. It's happening on the streets, everywhere. Antifa, I was in Rome 2 weeks ago. All over the world, the graffiti, you see it. All over the world, you see this happening on the streets, not just in the US, everywhere. And if you think it's not happening in South Africa, you would be wrong. Our politicians are bending the knee and raising the fist. Our athletes have been used to make the arguments. Heck, we are even shaping this debate. Associated with this movement was the toppling of statues. That began in this country. We were the first country as a part of this movement to topple statues. Which university was the first to topple a statue? No, not UCT, not Rhodes. Northwest, Butch, Tertius, the man who translated the Bible into Afrikaans, used to stand outside the law faculty. He got the boot. He's in some museum down the road now. Maybe you're a corporate person. We're not subject to this. Wrong. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Know this, when this thing shows up at your door with those consultants, you're drinking from this pond. And you will be made to conform. I don't care how big your corporation is. You will drink from this pond. Your policies for recruitment will be shaped by this thing. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does that mean? I know this. It actually has nothing to do with diversity and nothing to do with inclusion. Because if you disagree with this thing, you're going to be marched out. It's happening at our universities. I'm going to make some strong statements today. We whine a lot in this country about our political parties. This is the institution that's the greatest threat to our nation. Our universities. Did you hear that? I'm going to say that again. Our universities are the greatest threat to our country, and I'm going to show you why. Okay? This is happening. When you see them messing around with pronouns, as they are at UCT, know that this philosophy and these ideas have showed up. It's happening at Northwest University. You know that great conservative institution? Nothing could be more further from the truth. Here's what's happening at the University of Pretoria, coaching students on how to use the new pronouns. Z's, zers, zems. It's happening for matrics. If you want a lot of social capital, this will make you really popular in social media. Stop playing around with the concept of androgyny. What is that? It's the blurring of the distinction between male and female. Now, I'd submit to you that this young kid probably doesn't even know how to spell androgyny. He doesn't know what he's doing here. But he's been led down the nose by this thing, for sure. And it's also happening for African culture as well. You don't escape it either. How about this one? Eastern Cape teen who lives as trans woman to undergo traditional initiation into manhood. Wow. But this is my best picture, because this picture represents where you all stand. Look at these poor chaps. Okay? I love these guys. I love sport. Okay? I love these guys. Some of them think they're up there doing something. Unfortunately, they don't know what they're really doing. They don't know what this is really about. Notice them. They're not sure what to do. Bend the knee, lift the arm, raise the fist. Maybe not raise the fist, arms behind back, looking up, looking down. They don't really know what they're doing, but you better do it. You're all in the same boat, every single one of you. You're like this. Something's up. You've been forced to believe some things and say certain things, but you're not quite sure where all this has come from. What's going on? Douglas Murray, in this book called The Strange Death of Europe, says this: when I say that Europe is in the process of killing itself, I mean the civilization we know as Europe is in the process of committing suicide, and by the end of the lifespans of most people currently alive, Europe will not be Europe, and the people of Europe will have lost the only place in the world we had to call home. Wow. Wow. What a statement. This isn't some conspiracy theorist weirdo. It's just Douglas Murray. You can go onto YouTube, listen to him all the time. It's over if this continues in Europe. What is happening? Well, if you read his other book, The Madness of Crowds, which I commend to you all to read, he actually tells us why. He says this: we are being asked to believe things that are unbelievable and being told not to object to things, such as giving children drugs to stop them going through puberty, which most people feel a strong objection to. The pain that comes from being expected to remain silent on some important matters and perform impossible leaps on others is tremendous, not least because the problems including the internal contradictions, are so evident. As anyone has lived in totalitarianism can attest, there is something demeaning and eventually soul-destroying about being expected to go along with claims you do not believe to be true and cannot hold to be true. He goes on to say this, and this is going to focus my talk for me. We are going through a great crowd derangement in public and in private, both online and off. People are behaving in ways that are increasingly irrational, feverish, herd-like, and simply unpleasant. The daily news cycle is filled with the consequences, and here it is. Here's a truth bomb. Yet while we see the symptoms everywhere, we do not see the causes. What's causing this? I had that question. You're all asking this question because you're all bumping into these symptoms everywhere. What's causing this? Well, in some sense, it's quite easy to figure it out because as human beings, we're a particular kind of animal. We're an animal and a created being that functions according to ideas. We're rational beings. It's what distinguishes us from the animal world. You're not just a trousered ape, although you might sometimes behave like one according to my wife, so that's what she accused me of. But we're rational beings. So if you want to understand why people do what they do, find out what ideas are in their heads. Okay. This has something to do with Jesus and the truth thing, this thing about the truth being primary. Ideas. We are ideas creatures. So you figure out what ideas are, it'll tell you what's going on. Okay, so ideas have consequences. Let's look at the consequences. These guys had an idea, led to this, led to those kinds of things which aren't flying anymore, thank goodness, because they were bankrupting us. All right? This guy's got some cool ideas, having an impact. We might need some of these soon. All right? This man had some ideas. This man took those ideas, led to that. Power of ideas. Power of truth. The most important thing for every person. The question of truth. Pilate asked Jesus, what is truth? The question hasn't changed. And neither is the answer, by the way. This man had some ideas. We're going to talk about it. Some particularly rotten ideas. And this man and that man took those ideas. We got this and we got that. This man had ideas. We discussed them. Had an impact for the American people. This man's ideas affected the Indians, the Indian people, the Indian subcontinent. This man had some ideas. You're all living in the consequences of those ideas. Who's that? Yeah, this is Verwoerd. I do this lecture for young people in South Africa. Most South Africans, black and white, can't even identify him. They've got a lot to say about apartheid. They can't even tell you who Verwoerd is. Yeah. All right, so ideas have consequences. Now, just to center this whole thing now, this movement was associated with this BLM. BLM came up, it was all about being opposed to racism, and everybody was jumping on board. And then somebody's decided to say, no, hang on a sec, I don't think I'm with them. Well, aren't you opposed to racism? Well, yes, because they were all about being opposed to racism, were they? No, they weren't. They're about more than that. How do we know that? Because you could go to their site and find out. They've scrubbed this since then. But in addition to being opposed to racism, as they saw it, they were also opposed to this thing called the nuclear family. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure, requiring the supporting of each other's extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children. You won't find that on their site, taken off. This is why people were saying, what? I can understand being opposed to racism, but why are you hating on the family? Why? I couldn't put that together. That didn't make any sense to me. What is the connection there? We can be against racism, but why do you want to hate on the family? You had that question? We're going to answer it now. How extensive was the BLM movement? Everywhere. There's a picture taken by a mate of mine in Nepal recently. Hindu nation. It went everywhere. I was in Rome recently. Antifa and BLM signs graffitied on the walls there. So we're going to expose this. We're going to go back to that statement by Douglas Murray. We're going to we're going to try and find out what is causing these symptoms. We're going to unmask this thing. Here's the truth. These people govern your lives. Who are these people? None of you know who they are. These people don't just govern your lives, they govern the lives of most people on the planet today. Why? Because their ideas shape what our politicians do and how they think. The EU doesn't get its own ideas from somewhere. It gets it out of the modern day European universities, and these people teach them those ideas. These people rule your life, whether you like it or not, and you don't even know who they are. Who are they? They are some of the famous social justice scholars. We have a few here. Judith Butler, top left, Patricia Collins. We have Robin DiAngelo, Ibram X. Kendi, Bell Hooks, Kimberly Crenshaw, legal student. Paulo Freire on the left there, the Brazilian. Peggy McIntosh, Alison Bailey. And then an important one, that one I have there. We have Herbert Marcuse, discipling Angela Davis. Beautiful black woman with an awesome afro. Love it. Beautiful afro. But man, that woman has got some rotten ideas in that beautiful head of hers. We see that. Okay? Now, if you read their literature, okay, you will see that these people aren't top-level philosophers and thinkers. How can I make that claim? Because when you read their literature, you realize that much of what they're arguing for stands on the back of the ideas of these people. Well, who are these cats? These are a bunch of European philosophers. These people provide the ideological framework and foundation for what it is that you and I are now living in. Who are they? Well, we have in the red here, we have our resident European Marxists. We see Karl Marx there with the beard, but all those other guys, what do they all have in common? They're all Marxists. The guys in the blue are our French existentialists, Foucault, Derrida, François Lyotard. The guys in the red, we have Marx, Gramsci, we have Theodor Adorno, Horkheimer, George Lukács, the Hungarian, and Herbert Marcuse. Frantz Fanon, on the bottom here, is the only guy who is of a different ethnicity. And whilst he's African ethnically, ideologically, he's wedded to these people. French existential philosophy, Marxist to the core. They all have one thing in common, the philosophy of German idealism and a commitment to Marxist political thinking. All of them, no exceptions. Okay, so it's important for us as we drill down into these ideas that we get serious talking about which ideas are driving everything, because the ideas of these guys drive the ideas of those folks. Okay, so we need to learn something about Marx because he's at the center of all of this. We need to say something on the French Revolution. We don't have time to do that, but certainly the French Revolution, which was a humanistic revolution, had a profound impact on people like Karl Marx. Okay? And Karl Marx is a young Hegelian, which means he basically, for the most part, adopted the philosophy of Hegel, who gets his philosophical framework from Kant. Okay, so here's how it works. You take a contemporary social justice scholar like Judith Butler and you walk backwards in history and you bump into the people who provide her with the foundation for the arguments that she's making. And you go back and you realize those are tied to an earlier Marxist called Gramsci, and you go back to that and you end up with Karl Marx. So as I say to people, the brommer in your teacup, not the fly, because it's bad having a fly in your tea, but if you've got a brommer in there, yeah, that really ruins that cup of tea. Okay? The brommer in the tea is Karl Marx. Okay? And we need to know something about Karl Marx. Karl Marx, again, was a German philosopher, and he believed that there was a problem in society. And the problem in society that there were people who were being oppressed. And he thought he could explain what was causing the oppression. And his explanation for this was that society was divided between two kinds of people, between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, between the haves and the have-nots. And the only reason why the have-nots have not is because they've been exploited by the bourgeoisie. And so what we need a revolution. We need the workers of the world to unite, to rise up, and to seize the means of production, to control the economy so that they can control the funding, because it's an economic class problem. And so revolution is justified. In fact, Marx believed that his philosophy was scientific, that it was inevitable, that capitalism would ultimately fall. So the three classic doctrines of Marx is no property, no title, no profit. Exactly what the EFF is asking for. Okay? They don't just want this because they want to redress injustices in the past. They want this because they all be Marxists. So here's what we've got going on. Karl Marx is looking industrialized Europe. He sees the exploitation. He sees this disparity between people. He thinks he's got an answer. He says that what happens is it dehumanizes people, this particular condition, because you've got Jimmy working in factory number 7 on production line number 4, putting bolt number 3 into engine number 7. And that dehumanizes them. They don't see the fruits of their labor. They suffer from alienation. They never see the benefits of their produce. They're just there to be exploited. Capitalism, according to Marx, is just a form of another kind of smart slavery. Okay? So these are some basic ideas that we need to understand. And so that's why you've got to have a revolution. That's why you always have the hammer and sickle. The hammer represents the artisans, the tradesmen, the sickle, the farmers. It's going to be a dictatorship of the proletariat, classic Marxism. But it's also important to understand that Marx is influenced by a few people like Hegel, and also people like this, Feuerbach. You might have heard this from people who are skeptics and atheists. They say that Christianity is a psychological projection. You've invented God in your head. That idea came from Feuerbach, by the way. It didn't come from Freud. Freud gets it from Feuerbach. Okay. And so he was the one who argued for this. And he also believed that because God doesn't really exist, you just make him up in your own mind, you kind of put yourself in a state of what is called false consciousness. Marx picks up on this idea tremendously. In addition to the concept of projecting God, he said that your view of the family is then just projected to be a heavenly family. That too is just a construct in your head. It's a social construct. And if it's just something you've concocted in your head or as a group, why should I live subject to that idea of family? And Marx agrees with him and takes this idea, which is why we find within a central doctrine of Marxism is also a hatred for the family. Okay? He despises the family. The bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complement, private property, vanishes, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. What kind of culture is South Africa in terms of family? We have the vanishing of family. In fact, we have, according to my friend from Focus on the Family, Gramsci, I think we have near on the worst statistics of broken families in the world. The vanishing of family for a new utopia. And now we connect the dots. Why does BLM oppose the family? Because they're Marxists and they're following Karl Marx. It's consistent. Now you understand why BLM is opposed to the family. Why? Because they're all confessing Marxists. All right, so what you've got then is a problem now, because what religion does, and you might have heard this quote from Karl Marx. Karl Marx had contempt. He was an atheist, remember that? And he had contempt for religion in general, Christianity in particular, obviously being in Europe. He said, religion is a sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. Well, what does opium do to you? It dulls your faculties. It deadens your sensory perceptions. He says that's what religion does to you. All you Christians out there, you're all duped with Jesus and God. And you're stuck in this self-deceived condition that leaves you in a state of false consciousness. You got this from Feuerbach, by the way, as we've said. And so it makes you vulnerable to being exploited by the capitalist stooges, because you know you've got to respect authority. And you can't have a revolution if you be respecting authority, because people who respect authority don't throw Molotov cocktails, and we need somebody to throw some Molotov cocktails. That's how it works, folks. That's how it works. All right. So here he goes then. So false consciousness, bad. Christians are suffering from this. duped by religion, projection of God. God doesn't really exist. He's just a figment of your imagination. Okay? So what we're going to do is we've got to raise you to a critical consciousness. This is the thing. Critical consciousness. Critical race theory. Critical pedagogy. Everything that's been taught in our universities is tied to this philosophy. Where? Everywhere. There are no exceptions. All that's happening in our universities is there have been institutions that are pushing this Marxist philosophy. Where? Everywhere. In the law faculty, in the education faculty, in the social sciences, in the corporate world, diversity and equity training. This is the world we're all living in, folks. And if you can move from a state of false consciousness to critical consciousness, you become woke. That's just what wokeism means. To become woke is to be removed from that duped state of affairs to seeing the truth and the genius of Karl Marx. Well, unfortunately, philosophers are pretty useless at implementing anything, okay? But typically, everything usually begins in the philosophy department because it's the ideas department. But then along comes some people with political savvy, and they implement the philosophy. Well, this happened in Russia, 1917, important date. Along comes Vladimir Lenin, he thinks Marx is right. We have the Bolshevik Revolution. Consequences are huge. Now remember, Europe's in the middle of a war. A lot of people are desperate. It's brutal war. They look and going, maybe there's a new thing going on here in Russia, and we can be a part of that. A new future, a new utopia. People are excited. So a lot of Europeans are thinking, man, maybe this revolution is going to spill over the border and come our way, and we can have this new thing going on. Okay? Of course, as the Russians found out, it didn't end too well for them. They ended up with these things called gulags. And the Russians ended up butchering millions of their own citizens in arguably one of the most atrocious acts in the history of mankind. In fact, in terms of scale, what the communists in China and Russia did dwarfed anything the fascists did. You've all heard of the Holocaust, haven't you? You've heard of the Holocaust? Put your hand up if you've heard of the Holocaust. Put your hand up if you know what the Holodomor means. None of you. What is Holodomor? It is the famine that was instituted by Lenin to bring the Ukrainians to their knees, in which 6 million Ukrainians starved to death. As many Jews and others who died in the extermination camps died in Ukraine as a plan of famine. You don't know anything of that. You think that maybe that history is lying behind the animus now and what's going on in Ukraine? I mean, a lot of Afrikaners here, they're still trying to get over 28,000 deaths in concentration camps in our country. Swallow 6 million. It's interesting. We all know the Holocaust. We know nothing of Holodomor. Nothing. So what happens is a bunch of European intellectuals like Gramsci here, they see this revolution and they look at Europe and going, well, why isn't it happening here? And then they go, well, Marx was correct, but his analysis was too narrow. We can't just critique culture on the basis of economics and class. We need to critique culture on all aspects of society: art, entertainment, literature, concepts of man and woman, concepts of family. So along comes Gramsci. He introduces this concept of hegemony, in which he says this. He argued that the consent to rule the dominant group is achieved by the spread of ideologies, beliefs, assumptions, and values through social institutions such as schools, churches, courts, the media, and others. These institutions do the work of socializing people into the norms, values, and beliefs of the dominant social group. As such, the group that controls the institution controls the rest of society. So you realize, until there's change in all those institutions, then whatever ideology is present there, in this case it was Christianity, until you break that, you're not going to have a revolution. So what you want is you want a cultural revolution first. You want cultural Marxism. Folks, The social justice movement is just a cultural Marxist movement. And Antonio Gramsci, whom you never heard of, is the father of this entire catastrophe. So how does it work? Simply, we're going to use this slide today, so remember this. You want a political outcome, which is revolution. You've got to have a cultural revolution first by changing and dominating all the institutions. How do you do that? You get into the institutions. Now, these are the institutions that exist, and I have 3 of them in red. Why in red? Because those are the important ones. Those are the ones that traffic in ideas. If you get into these institutions and you dominate them, then everything else will follow from that. Forget about law and politics and all of that, because they just get trained at the universities. You dominate the university, you get everything. Now, I could have saved us a tremendous amount of time this morning, because I could have just used one slide to summarize the whole thing, which Gramsci conveniently does for us, because here he says it like it is. Socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity. In the new order, socialism will triumph by first capturing the culture via infiltration of schools, universities, churches, and the media, by transforming the consciousness of society. There it is. You're living in that world. This is the world of social justice. But they knew it was going to take time, so what we have to do is be patient. So we've got to go on what they called was the Long March. This guy, Rudy Dutschke, he was a communist, a European German student. We've got to be patient. We've got to get into the institutions, and over a period of time, we'll transform them. Now, everything I've said to you this morning, some of you might have heard of some of this. Most people I speak to have never heard of this. They don't know who these people are. They know nothing of this. Because they don't try and sell this to you like this. Okay? Which one of you is going to go home and cuddle up with, Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason? Ooh, sounds really riveting read. How about a bit of Hegelian philosophy? No. You're going to go home and you're going to watch rugby with your boys. You're going to go home and maybe send the kids outside and maybe make love to your wife. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? But whether you like it or not, folks, this is how the world works. And these obscure people, whether you like it or not, control your life. Because everything they taught filters down through the university, and all of a sudden you're in Somerset West and they're teaching what in my local school? What? Hang on. You want to build a new change room here? Because some young boy is going to swim in the gala with the girls? How did that happen? I'm explaining to you how it happened. Awake, O sleeper. Awake, O sleeper. How does it get fed to you? Let me show you. Let me show you how it gets fed to you. And more importantly, your kids, by the way. Hang on a sec. I missed that button there. I'm getting old now. I need some glasses.
We're never alone. And that is our strength. Because when we're doubted, we'll play as one. When we're held back, we'll go farther and harder. If we're not taken seriously, we'll prove that wrong. And if we don't fit the sport, we'll change the sport. We know things won't always go our way.
And the world's sporting events are postponed or cancelled.
But whatever it is, we'll find a way. And when things aren't fair, we'll come together for change.
We have a responsibility
to make this world a better place.
And no matter how bad it gets, we will always come back stronger. Because nothing can stop what we can do together.
Wow. And you stuck listening to some bold Rhodesian, ex-Rhodesian. And I got to go up against that. And your kids. You've been propagandized, folks. That thing is laced. Come on, Nike. I just want some tackies and some stretchy pants. So I want to jump the chair as well. Thick with it. Everything. BLM. We can't fit the sport. Change it. Change it to what? Everything there. Bending the knee, raising the fist, adopting the us versus them, the Marxist proletariat bourgeoisie. If you're not for us, you are against us. This is proper political propaganda, folks. This is how it comes to our culture. Let me give you one more. This is the latest. My buddies here from the Wilberforce, Africa, and Ryan, look at this latest one. I just got this. Watch this one here.
Today, we celebrate the birth of a new land. The land of new football.
It's like the old one, minus the nonsense.
There are no borders here. Only chalk or paint. Whoa. Or pedras, man.
Yo, what's up?
Hey, what's good?
Here, you can be whoever you want.
Class.
Be with whoever you want. Or just be. Et si vous n'êtes pas d'accord?
Au revoir.
This is our land.
So bring your love.
And leave the hate.
This is your land. It's bigger, it's better, it's nutmeggier. It's ready for your new sombrero flick and that weird new thing you do. You might as well join us, because no one can stop us. Welcome to the land of new football.
It's ours to build.
It's ours to play.
Yeah. What, new football? No, are you changing the rules? No, apparently not. So what's new about it? Oh, you got to be like us, you know? Always the token Muslim in these ads, all right? Always the LGBT, two guys kissing on the pitch, looking down the line, now the guys and the girls. So what's been changed is attitude. Attitude. And if you don't, au revoir. What chance do your kids stand? None. Why? Because you don't even understand this. That means they got no chance. That's maybe why we're having this conference, gents. Time to wake up. Time to wake up. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in South Africa. We're shaping the debate. One more. Watch and pay attention.
Here's Semenya. She's pushing on again and she's breaking away. She's going for something special.
Would it be easier for you if I wasn't so fast? Will it be simpler if I stopped winning? Would you be more comfortable if I was less proud? Will you prefer I hadn't worked so hard? Or just didn't run? Or chose a different sport? Or stopped at my first steps? That's too bad, because I was born to do this.
He does it again. Semenya takes the win. And
She trains in Port. She runs past us all the time. We're shaping this debate. Who's trying to prevent her from competing? Which tyrant? Well, the truth is she's got a medical condition, disorder of sexual development. So you can ignore the truth. So she has an advantage. But no, who cares about the facts? But if you raise your mouth, just like the Nike ad says, then we'll just change it. Change you. What is the social justice movement? It's a Trojan horse that comes along presuming to deal with issues of social justice when it has very little to do with it. It's about the establishment and entrenchment of this ideology everywhere. And we see it all over our country. Take the EFF recommended reading list, okay? You can go through. Here we go. Black Feminist Thought, Patricia Hill Collins. Celebrities. This is what our folks are reading. This is what our young people are reading. They're reading the social justice scholars whom you've never heard of. It's shaping the way they think. Concepts of intersectionality. Christians signing up for BLM. Them teaching matrix of oppression table. How about this one? This is what they teach in the social sciences now. What you've got to do in intersectionality is you've got to judge people by the color of their skin, whether they have stuff or not, whether they're male or female, whether they're cis or not, or a whole bunch of categories. So here we have it, for example, you have the issue on the outside, you have the privileged group, the oppressors, and the oppressed. So let's see how I fare. White guy, I'm not doing too well. Biological man, I fail again. Gender conforming, I'm a normal bloke. Oh, 3, not doing too well. I'm a heterosexual person. I'm a problem. I have some stuff. I wouldn't say I'm rich, but I do have some things. I'm able-bodied. Apparently that's oppressive. And I'm also a Protestant. And I'm an adult. Notice, Christianity is the oppressive religion. They teach this in your social science departments, by the way. Here's another one. Here we go. White, owning class, cis men, heterosexual. All the other religions are not oppressed. The oppressive religion is Christianity. So we have a black brother here. He's doing okay because he's got a black skin. But if he loves Jesus, there'd be a problem. Here we got another black brother. If you're a normal guy and able-bodied and you're Christian, fortunately, you're an oppressor. Thank you, Patricia Hill Collins. That's what the EFF people read. Now, I'm wrapping up this section now because I'm going to drop 2 bombs on you. This was the first small one, okay? The hydrogen bomb's coming this afternoon. So prepare yourself now, all right? Because I'm going to show you this afternoon what these people are doing to the family. If you have the stomach for it. And that is the end of the first